Hi there folks, it's Tim Golf 5 Tango Mike. Welcome back to another video. Now I went very briefly anyway on Saturday, it's now Tuesday evening. On Saturday I went HF Mobile, just very quickly, just for about half an hour to an hour or so, just to try something out. Now I've really enjoyed using Ampro ham sticks over the years, and I've really enjoyed recently using the Slidewinder DX coil with the Chameleon whip attached to it with a triple mag mount on the car. Now, both those systems, especially the Ampro hamstick system, if you like, which is a monoband whip, of course, for each band, involves me having to go up and change the antenna every time I wanted to move bands. And with the Chameleon, the Slidewinder coil and the Chameleon whip, I have to just adjust the coil to change bands. So, no big deal. But I thought, is there a way for me to make this a little bit easier for myself in my increasing old age and not have to go out there and change antennas or move coils, especially when it's raining or it's dark and, frankly, when I'm lazy, which is quite often. So what I went and did on Saturday, I did a bit of an experiment, really. And as you can see, what we have, I'll just show you the footage now, actually. I had the single mag mount this time with the Chameleon whip. And now the coax from the Chameleon, from the mag mount is about 4 meters long. That's about 13 foot, something like that. And I ran that into a tuner. I used my good old LDG tuner there, and then a short little bit of coax from there to the 891. So that was the sort of setup I used, and well, it worked pretty well, as we can see.
Italy 9 Whiskey Radio Tango Charlie.
Germany 5 Tango Mike Mobile.
Germany 5 Tango Mike Mobile 59.
73, good luck.
Ciao, Joey, QZ, Italy 5 Whiskey Radio Tango Charlie. QSM, Germany 5 Tango Mike Stroke Mobile. This is United Sierra 9, Italy Bravo Charlie. Good morning, my friend. Uniform 558. Germany 5 Tango Mike Stroke Mobile 59. Golf 56 Lima Charlie.
Roger, Roger, you're 5-9, India Oscar 90, Oscar uniform.
India Oscar 90, Oscar Victor, QSL.
Negative, uniform, Oscar uniform, QSL.
QSL, Oscar uniform. Thank you very much. 73. Thank you, Papa Victor 2 Kilo.
You're 589, nice signal from your mobile. Name is Dieter, Delta India Echo Tango Echo Radio, and the QTH is on the Agave in South Portugal. So what is your mobile setup? Go ahead.
Nice to meet you, Dieter. My name is Tim, as in Tango India Mike. I'm on the south coast of England, about 80 kilometres south of London. My working conditions, Dieter, are Fox Tango 891. I'm using a Chameleon whip on the car. We're about 3.5 meters long, and just a simple tuner in the car to bring it into line for some of the higher bands on HF, over. Now, the one thing with that setup, of course, is the length of coax, because it's 4 meters of coax there, about 13 foot or so, of course, and I was just worried about the losses. So what I did, I got my MFJ analyzer out, and at the input end, of course, that's the end where the coax, or the far end of the coax from the antenna, the bit that goes into the tuner in this case, I measured, before the tuner, I measured the SWR and took a reading of the resistance and the reactance, the R and X figures, just to see what we were faced with. And I put it into a table. So I thought I'd do now, just looking at the computer here, that I would show you what we found. So if we look at the table we've got, on the left hand side, in like the what do you call that colour? Peach. Let's call it peach. It probably isn't. I'm terribly colourblind. Anyway, you can see I measured five bands, 20 at the top, 17, 15, 12, and 10. And the measurements were for R and X there for each band, and also the input impedance about the Z, which is very important, and we'll come back to that shortly. And then the SWR at that end of the coax, the end, of course, where the coax, before the coax goes into the tuner, at that very end. And you can see there's a varying amount of measurement there. 20 meters with an SWR of 12.6 to 1, 7.7 to 1 at 17 meters, 4.6 at 15, 1.6 at 12, so a decent match, and 3 to 1 at 10 meters. And you can see there's various figures there for R and X. What I then did, I used a very useful program called Transmission Line Details. If you search for TL Details, you come across it. I think it's by AC6LA. Software that he wrote years ago, I think going back about 20 years ago. And it's still available now. You can download it directly to a zipper file. And it's dead easy to use, it's free of charge, and it works really well. And in that, you can enter the figures you've got there, for example, at the input, and then it'll calculate what the SWR was and what the impedance figures was actually at the load, which is, of course, where the coax is at, right at the antenna itself, at the feed point itself. And if we look back at the table in green, then we can see now for each one what the load was. So, for example, for 20 meters, the actual SWR we had at the feed point was 19.3 to 1, with an R of 7 and an X of minus 68. And it's going to be minus 68 because the antenna is only 3.25 meters long. That's about 10 foot 8 inches. So it's less than a quarter wave, about 2/3 of a quarter wave for 20 meters. There's a bit of reactance there. And in fact, if you look back at the table again on the far right-hand side, with that 4 meters of coax, we can see we've got a feed line loss of about 1.87 dB. That program I've mentioned will actually work that out for you, which is about 35% power loss. And if you go to 17 meters, well, what do we have? On the far right-hand side, we have a loss of just a fraction over a dB, which is about 20% loss. 15 meters, half a dB. 12 meters, a quarter of a dB. And 10 meters, about half a dB. So really quite negligible losses, especially above 17 meters. I can live with a dB. I could probably live with nearly 2 dB like we've got on 20 meters. But I'm a fussy so-and-so, and I quite like to see if I can tweak this. So what I've gone and done is using the same data, I've gone and adjusted the length of coax to see what I can do about reducing these losses. But remember, I mentioned to you earlier about that Z figure. Now, if we go back and show you again that first table, you can see on the left-hand side, you've got input Z, okay? Now, when you're presenting something to an ATU, a normal automatic tuner, like an LDG, or indeed the other LDG I'll be using, which is like the remote version of that, which you can use outside. Typically, those tuners don't like anything that's too high or too low in value. So anything, for example, my new tuner doesn't like anything less than 4 ohms or more than 800 ohms. So you can see there, looking at this table, there's a decent variety of impedance, but nothing terrible that the tuner can't match, well within that 4 to 800 ohm range. But as we move to change the feed line length, what we then get is the Z going up and down all over the place. So there's 2 instances, both in red you can see there in this table, where we have issues with that Z. First of all, on 20 meters, if you look across to the purple one in the middle there, where we have a 2 meter long feed line, okay? So the feed line loss at 2 meters, which has gone down now to 1.1 dB, far less, or a bit less than it was at 4 meters long length of coax, because we've got shorter coax, of course. But the issue we've got there is that it's in red, because the Z figure has actually gone down to 3 ohms. So my tuner might struggle with that. Now, as we take further length of that coax on 20 meters, suddenly the Z starts to rise and the tuner should be able to cope. However, on 17 meters, you can see in the yellow bit there, we've got an issue there. The Z is about 5 ohms, we're right on the cusp of it. So at 1.5 meters, we've got an issue with 17 meters, and at about 2 meters long, we've got an issue with 20 meters, potentially, okay, potentially. So with this length of antenna in this configuration, using real-world figures from the analyzer that I used originally at the input end, I was able to extrapolate that and then look at these different lengths. And as you can see, as we get to less long coax, shorter coax, we get quite a reduction in loss. If you look in the far right-hand column, when we're using 1 meter of coax with this setup, we've got hardly any losses at all. This is RG58, remember, okay? And we know the SWR figures at the feed point were pretty high in a lot of cases. But with a short run, we can get away with it for pretty much. The only thing I've got, of course, I need to have a certain run of coax to get the coax into the car. I don't really want to keep the, I know it's a waterproof ATU, but I'd rather keep it actually initially inside the car. So I'll need around at least, very least, about 1.2, 1.3 meters of coax, which is about 4 feet. So I need to trim that down. I'll also put a common mode choke straight after that as well, before it goes into the tuner, to make sure that I get rid of any potential common mode before the tuner sees it. I didn't do that in this case, but I suspect the longer coax might be a bit kinder on the tuner. The shorter length might put a bit more of a strain. I don't know, I just want to be sure about that. So I think I can get away with a length of about 1.2, 1.3 meters here. It's about 4 feet of coax. And it's worth having a go. And if I can get away with it, if the tuner will match all these different bands, that's 20, 17, 15, 12 and 10, it could be a bit of a winner. Get by the beach and we could have some fun with this antenna without you having to get out and bother to change antennas or move that coil up and down. Just me being lazy. Well, thank you for watching, and if you really like what you see, think about clicking that subscribe button. It'd be lovely to have you on board, and above all else, I hope you enjoy your radio and the growing activity we've now got, especially on higher HF bands like 10, 12 and 15 meters. If you want to click subscribe, then the link will be here, and if you want to watch another video, I'll put one up there. All the best to you. We'll catch you again soon, I hope, and take care. Bye-bye.